And now to Paris for a look at how federal lawmakers are tackling voting rights. Paris.
That's right, Brandis. The U.S. House passed a sweeping bill last week that would expand voting access and mandate a series of changes to the election system. Democrats say it's about protecting voters' rights, but Republicans argue it's motivated by politics.
We waved flags in honor of our democracy, but this legislation is there to protect the right to vote, to remove obstacles of participation.
Democrat legislation only helps themselves. Democrats want to use the razor-thin majority not to pass bills to earn voters' trust, but to ensure they don't lose more seats in the next election.
And joining us are Cameron Sholty, Government Relations Director at the Heartland Institute, and Ami Gandhi, Senior Counsel for the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Welcome both of you to Chicago tonight. So before I ask questions, let's outline some of the provisions in this bill. It enables automatic voter registration, a mandated 15-day early voting period, an end to partisan gerrymandering, and revealing the source of money for super PACs, more transparency there. Cameron Sholty, how would this bill impact voting and elections in the United States?
Thank you for having me this evening. I'm glad to be here. Ami, welcome. Thank you. This bill really does put a thumb on the scales of an election, is what it does. It has public financing provisions for elections in it. It requires disclosure of sources of money. It has automatic voter registration, as you mentioned. It has redistricting provisions and mandates in there. Simply put, the federal government, this federalizes elections and takes it out of the hands of the states, where it rightly and has traditionally always been.
And Ami Gandhi, we'll get more into that issue, but your read on this bill, how it impacts elections and voting in the United States, and specifically with communities of color.
This bill sets some basic standards. Our election system has been and will continue to be decentralized, but this would be an important step forward in giving some basic protection to voters who have been the most disenfranchised in our elections, which unfortunately still includes Black voters and voters of color who are unfairly blocked from fully being able to participate in our election system. We saw that in 2020. Unfortunately, we still see that today as we're continuing to face unique voting challenges in these pandemic times. And so the HR1 is an absolutely important step forward to giving some basic protections that all of us eligible citizens deserve.
Cameron, as this is making its way through the federal government, at the same time, the Brennan Center estimates there are 165 bills in state houses right now that would limit voting access, things like shortening early voting periods, so on and so forth. In fact, the governor of Iowa just signed a bill today, I believe, on this. How would those measures impact voting in elections?
Well, I think we can all agree that the more people who vote, the more people who exercise their franchise is a good thing in our democracy. What we're seeing in the states isn't a wholesale effort to disenfranchise voters. What it is a response to governors and courts changing the rules within days and hours of an election. So what you're seeing largely in the states is some sort of some stability, some predictability in the process.
Amy, your response to that, some of these moves in state houses to restrict some things like mail-in balloting and early voting?
The time is ripe to improve election administration and election security. And these measures are a good step forward to try to do that. We're still a ways away from the next federal election. It's a great time to set some clear basic minimum standards for eligible voters to be able to rely on. We unfortunately are facing threats to our voting rights, even in 2021, even in Illinois. And there have been a lot of common sense solutions that leaders across the aisle have agreed on to try to improve our election system, to try to improve voters, including first-time voters, feeling comfortable with the process. That's what we need to move forward at this time, not any frivolous attempts to block eligible voters from participating, like voter ID laws or unfair restrictions on vote by mail, which still remains an absolutely necessary tool in these dangerous public health times.
Cameron Sholty, back to the federal bill, HR1. It faces an uphill battle in the Senate, obviously, if it wants to get a filibuster-proof majority. Do you see 10 Republican senators supporting some of these provisions?
No.
Care to expand on that at all? Is there any compromise that you see that would be bipartisan?
I think if this bill would need to be wholesale rewrite if it were to stand a chance in the Senate. Again, many of the issues, the problems that GOP senators are going to have with this bill, as I outlined, is it usurps the authority and the capacity of the states to run elections as they see appropriate.
Ami Gandhi,
this
yeah,
is
go
an
ahead.
important time to, I'm sorry, excuse me. This is an important time to stand up for voters and what voters are asking for. It's not about what Republicans are insisting on. It shouldn't be about what Democrats are insisting on. We're here as a nonpartisan organization. We answer voters' questions to our hotline 866 Our Vote, and we hear from voters time and time again, regardless of which candidate or party they prefer. They're looking for a more straightforward, streamlined way to be able to participate in the process, not needlessly confusing bureaucracies and hoops for them to jump through.
And
so we really have to value voters' voices in this process.
Illinois has moved in this direction. The state's instituted automatic voter registration with an opt-out provision, expanded mail-in. How has that worked in Illinois?
It's been an excellent step forward where government leaders have come together with community members to say, let's improve our system. Let's have online voter registration, election day registration, automatic voter registration. Implementation is key, and we would always like to see stronger implementation of these provisions, but they certainly are a step in the right direction.
Cameron Sholty, only a couple seconds left, but say this federal law did pass, state legislatures doing something else, where would the law fall down here?
Ami is an attorney, and she knows full well the federal law would override any conflicting state statutes that would be in place. Again, if they conflicted, this would be tantamount to a unfunded mandate and cost considerable amounts of money to the states as well.
All right, well, we'll have to leave it there. Our thanks to Cameron Sholty and Ami Gandhi. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.